in the exam and it can be changed. So you should know what the term means and what is the scope of governance based questions in this topic. Okay, so the first takeaway is the definition of a digital arrest. See, it's basically about a financial fraud. What is a fraud here? Some scamsters will claim that they're from the government side and they will lock them out of the their bank accounts or the systems. So because of the nature of the crime, it can be between multiple states. You need a interagency coordination or you need a centralized agency to take care of this issue. It is in this context, Supreme Court gives a CBI free hand to stop this so-called digital arrest. So in prelims, you might get a question like, which of the following terms indicate the phrase digital arrest? A, B, C, D. You can get an option. Very straightforward question. Because when cyber security related crimes appear in news, you can expect questions like this. Also, are you aware of the term zero-day vulnerability? Pegasus. Have you heard of this software called Pegasus? What do you mean by that? It's a software wherein, let's say you have a phone, whether it is an iPhone or an Android phone, doesn't matter. The hardware maker as well as the software maker, neither of them are aware of a bug that is present. So essentially what we are trying to say is, both the hardware as well as the software makers have no idea that their device is held hostage. Anybody can peep into your phone and they can operate. They can switch on your camera. They can access your mails, records, everything. Basically, they have complete control over your data. And the existence of such kind of a vulnerability is not known. Such kind of problem is called zero-day vulnerability. An example for that is Pegasus. You can note that down too. Digital arrest, zero-day vulnerability. These two terms can appear in prelims. Yeah. Antimicrobial resistance. What is the main theme here? GS2, health. Under that, health governance. Health governance should address the issues popping up because of bad scientific practices, which is the scope of GS3. What will happen in antimicrobial resistance is a subject matter of GS3, science and technology. The mechanism part, the science part, is a part of GS3. This article is not about GS3, it is about GS2, health governance. So to deal with that scientific problem of microbial resistance, we need a actionable plan, and that plan is brought forward in 2017 for the first time, which is called the National Action Plan on AMR. So take a look at it. It brought AMR into national consciousness, multi-sectoral participation, surveillance, One Health framework. These are the things that was introduced to the public. GS2, health, governance. Now we are bringing in a new policy, and the policy will not only identify the problem, but it will also map the problem to a solution. That is essentially what a policy document is supposed to do. So this action plan within the larger framework of national health policy suggests that what is health? It's not just absence of disease, it is state of well-being. So we are in the negative end of the spectrum. If you draw a spectrum This is neutral. This is well-being. This is disease. So we are dealing in this zone if you're talking about microbial resistance. But the national health policy aims to universalize this well-being. It's a spectrum. Okay? So the policies should address these first and eventually move towards well-being when you're talking about the idea of healthcare. Clear? Now, let's look at this. If you have to move in that direction, you cannot always go for penalties, or you cannot scare people into doing the right thing. You need cooperation from the people. And the first thing that will always be about spreading the awareness. Once you know that you should not indiscriminately use antibiotics, that's the beginning point. So, multi-sectoral participation. Only if doctors stop prescribing antibiotics, it's not enough. The plight of doctors is that if a doctor doesn't prescribe medicine, he's looked down upon as if he's not doing his job properly. If he writes a lengthy prescription, then you are satisfied. If you go to a diagnostic center and you don't get any disease recognized under it, you feel it is a waste of money. So if you get something in that report, are you happy? In a weird way, sometimes people might be happy. That's not how it is supposed to be, right? So you need to ensure that the public consciousness should be first revived when you want solution for a problem. It requires all the stakeholders, public, pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies, doctors, every stakeholder in the sector of health, from the grassroots level till the health minister or probably even WHO. Everybody should come into the picture and act on a same war footing to stop this problem. And it begins with people's consciousness. That's the One Health framework that we are talking about. When you are dealing with this One Health, you are not bifurcating, animal health and human health separately. You are looking at entire life forms and its relation with the environment as a unit. Because systems thinking. Without understanding the relation between humans and animals, if you disturb that ecosystem, we have seen what can happen in COVID. Right? So, it became all the more important to adapt a One Health approach even in antibiotic resistance issue. For example, if you indiscriminately give antibiotics to, let's say, in the poultry industry or dairy industry, do you think it will impact you also because you are consuming in one way or the other? The magnitude of that impact is something that we don't know. The research did not document it. But it's inevitable in a long run. So, because of this reason, we have had a One Health approach. Now, going forward, there are many states which implemented this in varying degrees. It is not important to sit and track each individual state's progress on these metrics. But all the states at least are trying to move in the direction of AMR. Curbing AMR. The majority continue to rely on fragmented activities within individual sectors, not the ideal One Health approach. You're still looking at things in silos. Is this problem peculiar only to health sector? It's pretty much the case in every governance framework. You don't treat it like a system. Silos-based thinking is the problem in almost every sector, and it is not limited to health alone. India's broader public health experience shows that real progress happens when the center and states work within the structure. What are we talking about? GS2, center-state relations, federalism. From Planning Commission, we moved to Niti Aayog. Within the framework of Niti Aayog, we are talking about cooperative federalism. The same way of thinking is universal for almost all concurrent list and state list related issues. Okay, you need the cooperation of the states, and governance should also replicate that structure, cooperative structure. Clear? Now, the second plan, the first leg of the plan is over. Now we are moving towards the second leg. So here we are talking about the National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. This has been fairly a success, but still it's a huge issue in India. Why? 25% of the entire disease burden of TB is from India. 1 in every 4 patients across the world suffering from TB are in India, which requires us to scale up our activities with respect to this. So it has seen some fairly good progress, but there's a lot of work to do. So if you learn from that, there are multiple states. Yesterday there was one article on how Tamil Nadu has achieved good progress in TB and AIDS. And similar thought process should be applied here also. So what did they do? Take a look at this. It introduces a higher level of national oversight by intersectoral supervision under Niti Aayog. There's a monitoring committee. Why can't Ministry of Health Affairs do this? This is one question that you have. What is the purpose of Niti Aayog? Niti Aayog is a monitoring mechanism. It's like a think tank. Health Ministry is more of an execution body. Monitoring is a work that is best done by Niti Aayog because that is what it specializes in. Health Ministry should ideally stick to ensuring that the game plan that we have designed for ourselves is getting implemented at the grassroots level and also at the respective central and state levels. Whatever is the corresponding responsibility of the center and state governments, is that being fulfilled or not, is best dealt by Ministry of Health Affairs. And when it comes to program monitoring and collecting the data and doing that data analysis on what can be done better, that is something Niti Aayog can dedicatedly focus upon. You might be wondering, it is easier to put the same in Ministry of Health Affairs, right? It's like a conflict of interest, and also you would have to recruit. It's for that administrative inconvenience. It's always better to have, specialists who are supposedly doing this work as a full-time job rather than putting the same officials with additional burden and hiring some more consultants. So this is the takeaway. This is the major point that you need to know. But there is some shortcoming. What are the shortcomings? Firstly, the plan stresses that states must develop AMR action plans and establish cells, but does not create any mechanism to ensure that they do so. In a plan, the biggest takeaway is execution. If you're not executing, there should be some punishment. There is no conditionality here. In the absence of an enforcement mechanism, it remains as wishful thinking in policy. That's the biggest problem. So states can say, we don't have budgets. It's not an important thing for us now. But when it strikes back, let's say for example, if the number of TB cases increase and the drugs are no longer working, what will we do then? So it requires that adjustment here. So there is no formal center state platform for joint reviews. When we're talking about joint reviews, how is this different? We are just collecting the implementation statistics. Outcome statistics should also be collected, but if you don't have an enforcement mechanism, what outcomes are we talking about? So Niti Aayog is just a think tank. It can't enforce. And the policy doesn't have anything to enforce. Center is ideally placed to do this. It's not enforcing anything. So everything will, again, there's a danger of this falling apart. So it requires some monitoring mechanism which is enforceable, and that enforcement will come through a law. Okay, so why is it needed? You can see here experience from National Health Mission and Tuberculosis Program shows that communication through chief secretaries can significantly shift administrative actions. State has many priorities, but the problem is we are running short of triple F, funds, functions and functionaries. Even if you have power, you don't have enough funds is what they claim. And functionaries, we definitely don't have grassroots level health workers or enough number of doctors. In many North Indian states, we don't even have necessary infrastructure. In that scenario, thinking of a plan like this and implementing it would be extremely difficult, because people are conditioned to believe that without medicine they can't get better. In that scenario, what do? We have to rewire this entire governance architecture, make it enforceable, and that's what the article is talking about. India has the opportunity now to build a coordinated and accountable center state model for AMR control. That is the thesis. So I'll give you a broad logic for governance. When you are talking about any social justice program or welfare program, no matter the target beneficiaries, whoever they might be, there is only one thing you need to remember. Without cooperation between the center and the states, it's virtually impossible to produce the end desired result. And if we have the third layer of governance, that is grassroots level, nothing like it. That's the best possible scenario. What is stopping us? Basically, political will. So, if you take the governance architecture as a formula, so you have the center and the state. Then you have Niti Aayog, okay, which is coordinating, but it is not enforceable. The only way you can enforce something is through law. And when you have this law, you can demand accountability and transparency. Center can demand accountability and transparency. But again, there will be a danger. Why? What is that danger? The subject matter of states, let's say for example law and order or health. What is the problem? Health execution is majorly in the hands of their planning also. So when you don't allow the states to decide what is good for them, you are challenging the democratic principles here. So the challenge will be federalism. And federalism is a part of the basic structure. So how will you solve this conundrum? If you do it, it is violation of basic structure. If you don't do it, AMR problem will increase. So, citing this, can you break this? No, right? So the best way to do this is the concept of tied funds through finance commission. When the money flow stops, everything will be fixed. Or alternatively, you don't like this, create a state finance commission and start devolving funds to the local bodies. This is the framework for every problem, governance problem. The answer for democracy's problems is more democracy with checks and balances. Use this thought process everywhere and most of your answers will be solved. Clear? Moving on. The need for heart resilient urban planning. Now, what is the simple assertion here? Take a look at the end point. Cardiovascular disease is not only a personal concern, it is a reflection of how cities are built. Your health and urbanization. GS2, health and urbanization. The assertion here is people who are living in cities have bad cardiovascular health. Heart condition is bad. Why? Understand the reasons, then the solutions. That's all. Okay. Now, let's look at the assertion here. India reflects on urban solutions to crisis. The most enduring solution may be cities should be designed to nurture human heart. Whatever keeps our heart healthy, according to the author, will keep the cities sustainable. Clear? Now, let's see one by one. Now, if you are saying that in cities, people are not living a healthy life, you need some data to prove that. Let's see if the author is giving that data or not. So, it is observed as World Habitat Day, 8th October. And beneath this visible challenges of pollution, heat, inequity, an emergency is there, that is cardiovascular ailments. Okay. Who is the writer here? Cardiologist. You can see. So he is bringing his viewpoint from his angle. You can replace cardiology with health in general. What is a human right? Anything that stops us from, accessing our true potential is a human right violation. So, for example, if the city around us is actually harming us in a way that it is not allowing us to explore our full potential, that's because you have a environment that is harming you, and using the harm principle, the government must address those harms. So let's recognize that firstly. So you have a concept of DALI, disability adjusted life years. I don't know if it is there here or not. Generally, that is a very good metric to say how life is getting shorter because of city life. Like say for example, pollution, urbanization, traffic, something. Okay, DALY. In Lancet, there is a journal called Lancet. Lancet came up with this metric called DALI, which is a very good metric of how health systems can get distorted. All right. So what are the reasons? Can you tell me the reasons? Take a look at this. You know the reasons: lifestyle, pollution, stress. These are the broad reasons which are mentioned here. Now, what are the solutions? First, mobility, walkability and active mobility. Second, green infrastructure. Third, mixed land use, where you are combining both residential as well as commercial spaces, integrating them so that everything is like a satellite township. Everything, your workspace is walkable, your school is walkable, hospital is walkable, your entertainment zone is walkable, everything is in a commutable distance. That is mixed land use case. Fourth, public transport systems. If you want to move from one part of the city to another, you need resilient urban mobility solutions. Okay. Fifth, healthy food ecosystems, which will shift the focus away from this urban junk food life to a healthy lifestyle. And here we have to focus on whatever is available locally so that even local economies sustain. Okay, these are the 5 measures suggested by the cardiologist here. What are the stress? You can see here there is a data point. Asia could see a 91% rise in cardiovascular mortality by 2050 because of these reasons. So we need a holistic planning which will address each of these problems. Rest of the things, like there is one study here. India state level disease burden study reports a 2.3-fold increase in cardiovascular diseases among the marginalized groups. Previously, diabetes like conditions are usually seen only in the affluent groups because they had excess money and they were able to afford calories, more calories. They consumed more than what their bodies could afford. But that phenomenon is now changing. Even a farmer who is actually having a very physically demanding work, even they are having this lifestyle is issues. Why? There needs to be some long-term research. At this point of time, we don't have that research. Anyway, so this is the gist of the article. Moving forward, capturing urban dynamism in the 2027 census. See, what is the importance of census? It is basically the data set through which we will be carrying out all our policy decisions. Right. Now, if this data set itself is flawed, all our policy targeting and the beneficiaries will also be inefficient, right? It is in this context, what should we take care of census so that our urban agenda is fulfilled? This is the central thesis of this article. So the problem here is we want to showcase the urban growth from the previous census to the next census. Let's say if 2011 census defined urban life through some metrics, let's say anyone above 1 million population, or let's say certain amount of population density, income status, people having non-farm jobs, something like this. If you are giving a definition and everybody else is in rural area, what about the peri-urban areas? What do you mean by peri-urban areas? There are areas which are having a mix and match of both the rural lifestyle and the urban lifestyle, somewhere on the borders or the outskirts of the city. They exhibit neither the characteristics of a village nor urban centers. And this classification is not doing justice to these areas. It is in this context, especially due to the fact that after 2014, the rate of urbanization is supposedly drastically changed. Many people are living in densely populated areas which can now be categorized as cities. And there are equally high number of areas living in the peripheral zones. And they will miss out on this definition of cities. So there needs to be a movement away from this so-called simplistic classification of urban and rural, and also move towards the UN classification, a global level classification that captures all this, captures all this peri-urban areas also. Okay. What is the methodology we need to adapt here? First of all, in a country like India, we need to move towards real-time data capture. In a country that flaunts itself as the IT capital or the IT skills capital, with the present age of AI, I don't think capturing data would any longer be difficult. Even if it were about migrant movement also. And capturing the data of migrants is all the more important because they are excluded from the social welfare opportunities that they should ideally get. The very design of policies will change when you know the exact data. So if you are still following the old data, like as of now, that's the mechanism. That's going to be a problem. So we need to move away from that and start developing data that will also capture the climate realities, the carbon footprint and the impact it will have on the that geography. That should also be captured. Okay. So this is the overall planning methodology, and the simple change in definition can lead to so much, in terms of policy planning. This is what this article says. Why does India need bioremediation? What do you mean by bioremediation? Use of biotechnology in such a way that you are cleaning the waste. There will be microbial activity on the waste which will eat up that waste and remove that from environmental, from that ecosystem basically. So since we produce so much waste, India needs to have a commercial scale, large scale bioremediation techniques, and it is in this context we are also worried about if GMOs are entering into our ecosystem, what will happen? Because let's say if they start eating up more than what they were supposed to do, or they change their behavior, any anomaly or any abnormality starts, you will not have a control on how they'll behave. Okay, so there needs to be some study on how they will behave, but the larger idea is how to use bioremediation. What are the two different types of bioremediation? Basics, in situ and ex situ. If you are cleaning up the waste, let's say Pusa biodecomposer, for example, which was brought out by, which was deployed in the stubble burning issue. It's like a liquid. If you spread it on the stubble waste, that stubble waste will be consumed up by the bacterial microbes through microbial activity there, and that will eventually reduce that wastage, but it will require some time. That is in situ, on the site itself. But if you're transporting all of that waste to somewhere else, that is ex situ remediation. This is something that is taught in the basic classes. Okay. Now, how is traditional microbiology combined with cutting edge biotech? What is biotech? What do you mean by biotechnology? Whatever you understand. See, microorganism being used is not biotech. It's conventional. What is the difference between science and technology? Your syllabus is science and tech. Biotech is the application of biological principles to create a useful end product. Technology is about use cases that will solve the problems of humanity. And for that to happen, you should know the basic science. So if you see research as an activity, two parallel streams will go on. On one hand, we are exploring science. It's not like we have got everything figured out in science. Parallelly, streams of science and streams of technology. On both those ends, you will have R&D. Okay, core science and technology. Technology R&D will lead to innovation. Science is a prerequisite. You expand the horizon of the science, that will act as a feeder for technology to grow. Okay, so understand this. In this context, biotech is different, biology is different. When you are using, when you're just putting microorganisms there without modifying them, it's basic microbial activity that is happening there. But if you engineer that microbial activity to exhibit a specific desirable action, that is biotechnology. Any sort of manipulation that you do with an intent to benefit humanity or sometimes even harm it is technology. Okay, so the biggest problem here is GMOs and the adverse impacts they can have. There are many startups which are working in this field. Apart from IT, the biggest use case that AI will have is in terms of research in natural sciences. which will act as a feeder for the future innovative products. All right. So where does India stand today? We have the Department of Biotech, which is coming up with something called Clean Tech Program. In Europe, you have something called Mission Innovation. EU will have this Mission Innovation, and there are various ministerial groups. Okay. These ministerial groups are coordinating with countries across the world to expand the horizon of this research. In one of them, India is actually heading. The chairperson is, following a cyclical process, like after a few years, some other country will take up. The last I remember, India is heading one of the clean tech ministerials. And the nodal agency here in India is Department of Biotechnology. Because we are using biotech as a tool to move towards this green technologies. Okay, this is a very famous mission innovation of EU. Please go back and check that once. Okay, so that is what is happening now. The risk I've already explained. What next? First, there is a need to develop national standards for protocols. Second, bioremediation hubs. Finally, engagement and awareness among public. Okay, that's it for the day. Okay, this one last issue. Basically, what we are talking about is rare earth minerals. In the journey of energy transition from one fuel to another, like battery based fuels, we would be requiring this rare earth minerals. Okay, to exploit that, India came up with a PLI scheme, production linked incentive, and within that we are using this PLI schemes primarily for this rare earth permanent magnet manufacturing facilities. There are criticisms about this because, again, even for producing this, we are depending on China. The root cause is not getting addressed. Once you produce this, again, China is importing them at a low cost and quickly using up their rare earth minerals. This is one of the criticism there. But will it ever be sustainable for us? Long answer is, no matter what the article says, we don't have those resources. It's not sustainable in the long run. So we have to find an alternative mechanism or continue to depend on China. This is the gist of the article. That's it for the day. Thank you.